Hi, guys. I'm Thomas Hare, the Chief Content Officer of the Performance Driven Marketing Institute, and a not for profit trade association that serves companies in the performance and direct to consumer marketing world. Welcome to the second event of our fall seminar series created by the PDMI's Workshop Council. What are your fearless predictions for 2021? We welcome all of you to today's event, PDMI members and non members alike. Speaking of membership, if you're not a PDMI member but are attending today, we'd love to have you consider joining. In this difficult year where we've lost our two multi-day conventions, there's no better way to support the mission of the PDMI than joining and sharing your voice in the direction of this industry. In the handouts tab of your control panel, you'll find our PDMI membership brochure. I urge you to download it, flip through it, and contact any of our team members should you desire more information about PDMI membership. Before we get to today's conversation, one other housekeeping note. The group will be addressing any questions from the audience at the end of today's session, but you don't have to wait to ask them. Utilize the questions tab on your control panel as an attendee and send in your question. We'll be collecting them and we'll try to get to as many as possible in the final moments of the webinar. Let's get to it. Today, we're welcoming these tremendous members of our esteemed Workshop Council, one of 4 member councils currently operated by the PDMI, to discuss their fearless predictions for 2021. And I have to say, anyone who's willing to step up and make a prediction about next year after what's happened this year deserves a lot of credit. We at the Workshop Council are tasked with doing just this, and that's creating webinar content for our members on a monthly basis. This is the Council's 6th webinar of 2020. If you're a PDMI member and would like to get involved, reach out directly to me to share your interest in the Workshop Council today. So let's start by meeting our speakers. I'm going to go in alphabetical order, and when I say your name, feel free to wave and say hi. First, we're going to say hi to Shai Barziv, the Director of Business Development and Partnerships for Rapid Phone Center, where he's responsible for developing partnerships and cutting-edge technologies that bring the highest possible ROI to clients in the industry. Next, Joseph Gray is the CEO of PDMI research partner DR Metrics, which he created in 2012 to provide much-needed insights and competitive data to the direct-to-consumer television industry. Mike Johnson is the Vice President of Business Development at Paymerang. He's an experienced sales professional with extensive knowledge with SaaS sales and is skilled in sales, CRM, team building, and account management. Mike's our newest member of the council, so welcome in, Mike. Amy Mudge is the co-leader of Baker Hostetler's advertising, marketing, and digital media team. She routinely represents top-tier companies for the Federal Trade Commission, National Advertising Division, and the Children's Advertising Review Unit, as well as in private, federal, and state class action defense, consumer protection, and antitrust litigation. The chair of the Workshop Council is Andrea Pass, owner of Andrea Pass Public Relations. She focuses on such categories as consumer products, DRTV, small business, parenting, education, and more. Pass is a leading women entrepreneur, top 25 brand builder, and a DRMA Member of the Year finalist. Patrick Raymond is a brand creative architect specializing in content creation, strategies, and execution, and is an award-winning TV director, filmmaker, CEO, executive creative director, executive producer, and writer. His footprint is seen in prestige beauty campaigns, including top-ranking TV beauty campaigns for the Luminous Cosmetics and Contour skincare brands. And last but not least is Thor Associates Managing Partner Lori Zeller, who is responsible for providing out-of-the-box turnkey solutions for operational efficiencies. Zeller is a visionary in the conceptualization of direct and brand response marketing, able to execute integrated omnichannel creative strategies. She's also an emerging abstract artist, having been accepted in museum and gallery exhibits throughout the United States. So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We appreciate you being here. Let's just get started. We're going to go in alpha order. That means, Shai, you're up. What's your fearless prediction for 2021?
Well, I think I was giving this a lot of thought, and I think primarily what's going to happen is that any trends that we expected to see, specifically in technology, as it applies to marketing in all phases of the customer life cycle, any trends that we expected to see over the next 5 years are probably going to happen in the next year or so, because everything just got accelerated so much with the COVID situation. I think technology is this thing where the space of technological innovation is this thing where if you think you need it, you're already too late. So the kind of the space in which we find ourselves right now, where we're working within a sandbox of necessities and so much has changed, it's definitely going to push a lot of innovation in that sector. And I think that it's going to apply to every single phase of the customer life cycle. We're going to see new innovations, new companies that are focused on pre-sale experiences, new companies and new innovations focused on the sale experience as it's going on, and then post-sale We're going to see a lot of investments in customer service and in AI technology. I think next year is going to be the year of artificial intelligence and augmented reality. And I think they're going to apply to different aspects of the customer life cycle. I think AI is probably going to be used a lot in the post-purchase um, phase. You know, a company like us, we've been making some heavy investments right now into artificial intelligence, so we can use chatbot technology, so that we can provide attribution that we generate off of all these data points that we generate out of customer service calls. And then on the pre-sale side, I think there's going to be a lot more investment into augmented reality, which should, you know, I think a couple of years ago we saw IKEA sort of generate this app where you could buy furniture, and you could sort of, like, before you buy it online, you could test it out in your home and things like that. I think that's just something that's going to come back very strongly, and it's going to be very interesting to watch. I think life is going to go back to normal next year to a very high degree, and it's going to be, and let's keep our fingers crossed. So it's going to be very interesting, because we're going to go back to normal, but we're also going to be seeing a big wave of technological innovation, probably more than we've seen in our lifetime. So that's very interesting. It's very exciting for a lot of marketers that are, you know, that we're pushing for things over the next 5 years. Now everybody has to accelerate and put their foot on the gas pedal, so that everybody is able to keep track of the competition. So I think that's probably what we're going to see next year, is heavy investments into technology. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Actually, you know, you mentioned a lot about technology, but you're also talking a lot about the customer experience, which I know Lori is really kind of involved in. What are your, like, you know, you have some thoughts on how Shai sees that customer experience changing in the next year?
I believe that Shai's spot on. A part of what I see happening is that the marketing funnel is not going to stay at the top. We're going to create omni-channel exploration. So the journey and the experience of the customer really becomes something that's interactive and totally humanistic. And that will redefine how marketing and really what we do in performance-driven marketing initiatives is put forward.
Great. Anyone else have thoughts on what Shai said? All right, we're going to go next to Joseph. Joseph, your vision for next year.
I'm not going to put forth anything as wide-reaching as what Shai just discussed, and, you know, tough act to follow over here. But, you know, I've been looking at data. We've been looking at data, DR metrics, all year long since this COVID disruption, and so most of my focus has been trying to make predictions with that kind of data. I have seen some interesting trends of late that I wanted to share. Starting back during the quarantine itself, and we've published some studies about this, certain sectors of the industry on television have really accelerated their media investments. For example, we took the top 26 as seen on TV companies. What's interesting about that subset is these are companies that use what we call DR variations, and they use different phone numbers and other means of tracking their TV attribution back to specific networks and day parts. So while there was all of this disruption of media, and while brand advertisers were having trouble reading, you know, the tea leaves, you know, here you have a segment of advertisers that are measuring everything, including consumer sentiment. Are consumers still calling and ordering? Is there still a level of consumer confidence where we can go out and buy this media? Because rates are going down, television viewership's going up, and the only question becomes, are consumers responding? Are consumers buying? And so the performance-based television side of our industry could measure that. And that's what really makes, I think, our industry unique. And during the quarantine period, while more consumers were at home watching TV than any other time of the year, we saw collectively about a 376% increase year over year in media buying across this group of 21 as seen on TV companies that we were using as a proxy and studying. We continued to study them post-quarantine, and media weeks like 20 through 38, right after that shutdown, they were still up 200%. So a little bit of a step down, which I guess could be expected. You know, rates were really, really discounted during quarantine. At some point, the market starts to realize we need to get back in, we need to be buying more media. So, you know, we saw that happen. We saw a little bit of contraction. And that contraction's continued through the end of the year here. You know, moving forward, media weeks 39 to 47, you know, those expenditures that had been at 376% down to 200%, now down to 79% year over year. So again, we're starting to see a deceleration of how much media cost effectively these companies can purchase. And then we looked at the post-election. You know, this is the big unknown. You know, what's going to happen after all of these political ads come off the air? And I think what we've seen is a continue of that trend downward. We're looking at about a 44% year over year increase in media expenditures, which is still impressive. You got to consider that category was down about 26% in 2019. So we've gone from 376, sort of the pinnacle of growth, down to 44%. So the question becomes, what is Q1 going to look like as we get into 2021? Is there going to be pent-up demand? Are we going to see more branded advertisers coming back early? Normally they may wait until second quarter. Don't have the answer for that, but that's a consideration. Obviously, Q1's always been very accommodating for the performance-based television industry. You know, I'm hopeful that we're going to see a really strong quarter for the performance-based television industry, but I do see things starting to return to normal. I expect maybe as we get into Q2, we're going to be back to sort of the normal national media environment that we've had over the past few years. And, you know, what a ride we had through 2020. While a lot of these branded advertisers pulled back, we were able to measure and take advantage of pretty much a unique opportunity. And again, hoping to see that continue at some level through Q1.
Yeah, that's great, Joseph. You know, it's been a crazy year for the traditional direct response space, and as we've seen so many times in the past, when there's upheaval in the world and upheaval in across the country, for various reasons, the direct response industry tends to backfill for the traditional brand advertisers who struggle. Listening to what Joseph said, does anyone want to step up and give their view on what they think the media climate might look like in, say, the first 3 to 6 months of next year for direct response products? Anyone?
I think it depends really on. I think what's going to happen is that something that really occurred was there's big changes in media consumption. I don't know if I mentioned this before, and that's gonna generate some, you know, real necessities for marketers, you know, specifically that are moving from the TV world to the e-commerce world, because I think that's really what happened over this year was that we got so many new online customers, and I think a lot of people that had only, you know, been participating in the world of traditional media were trying to transition to e-commerce, and they found out that the kinds of attributions that Joseph is talking about are much more specific in e-commerce than they are in the TV world. And I think a lot of TV advertisers now are looking for that kind of thing, are looking for new ways of generating proper attribution. I think DR Metrics does a great job at that, and I think Joseph is totally spot on the fact that performance marketing and direct response marketing sort of have the upper hand in that sense. So like brand advertisement, where it's very difficult to measure attribution. So the you know, the media climate next year is probably going to remain the same as we go back to new normal. We're still going to see massive transitions from the traditional media world into e-commerce, and I think a lot of everybody who's in the marketing world has to look at that and kind of see what the opportunities there are. You know, e-commerce is very good at being specific, but TV is very good at scaling and providing scale. So they're going to influence each other in very good ways, and we might see a lot of interaction between those two worlds. So
yeah, absolutely. You know, dipping into the e-commerce side and how many new e-commerce customers there are in 2020. I'm going to jump over to Amy real quick here and ask you, with so many new customers jumping into e-commerce, where do marketers have to be when it comes to data privacy and those types of things? Obviously, so many of these marketers may not have been kind of up to speed on where that's at, and obviously that's an ever-changing thing with what's going on in California and what's going to follow. So maybe you can touch on that a little bit, and then we'll go to Michael for his prediction. Nope, Amy is on mute. Hold on, let's find. Send unmute request.
Okay, I get it. I was the first one that did it. All right. It wouldn't be a webinar without somebody talking on mute. But anyway, Tommy, you're 100% right. I mean, it's now with the increase in the numbers of people buying online, it's just the scope and the scale of the data that we have is growing exponentially. And that data has increasing value. We're seeing companies in a pinch looking at data as their next monetization source. And I think we've seen this, we've already seen it with California beginning a very aggressive right out of the box enforcement over the CCPA. And we see a very aggressive FTC. So I think it's and it's not just e-commerce, it's social commerce and shoppable ads, and the way that we're taking these customers who are now online and traveling with them to get their dollars in all different kinds of online media where they're participating. So I think if I had as the lawyer to say, something to get ahead of is making sure you've got your data mapping, understand what data you're collecting, what data you're selling or sharing, how you're using that data, what you tell customers about how you use their data, and then separately how you actually use it. And then the other piece is how you secure it. Because one of the other things we've seen during this pandemic is, the cyber attackers have not taken any break.
Mm-hmm. If they've actually probably accelerated, so absolutely. So before we get to Mike, I just want to let everyone know who might have joined a little bit late. We are going to be reacting to audience questions at the end of this, but you don't have to wait. You can use the questions tab on your attendee control panel to send us questions. We'll be collecting them, so please feel free to shoot your questions over to us. Mike, the newest member of our workshop council, made it in just under the deadline to join us for this momentous occasion. Can you share your prediction for 2021?
Yeah, thanks for letting me join. First of all, I'm going to get to what Amy said in a second about fraud. It's going to be huge next year. I think where we all need to start is what's really changed. And I think the first thing that's changed is our workspace, right? So, most of us, a lot of us were in offices, and a lot of us aren't in offices anymore. We're working from home. And I think that makes a big difference from our buying patterns. We're not going out, we're staying at home. We're buying a lot more from home. We're watching a lot more TV. Our families all around the TV watching it. So I think it's really going to change. I don't necessarily think that a lot of companies are going to be sending their employees back quick at the beginning of this. I think, it's probably going to be June, July before you start to see a lot of companies moving back into the workforce. And a lot of the larger companies that I've talked to have found that where it's so expensive to house employees, and a lot of them are doing really well with their employees off-site working from home, that a lot of people are going to stay at home. They're not going to come back to work like they normally did, or at least not coming back all the time. So I think as marketers, we need to figure out, what does that mean? How are we going to market to these people? Because the times that they're watching TV are going to be different. What they're buying is going to be different. I know personally, Christmas shopping has really changed for me this year. I didn't go out. There was no Black Friday, and it's a big event for me and the family. And, almost everything that I bought has been online this year and off of TV and ads and things like that. And I think that COVID changed everything. I think that, although we'd like to get back to normal, I think Shah said it, there's a new normal coming about, and I think we need to adapt to that and figure out what that is for everybody. And some of it's exciting, some of it I think is really good, some of it's not so good, so we'll see what happens there. I am very concerned about fraud. I've seen a significant amount of fraud in payments over the last 6 months or so. It's tough when people aren't in the office. They aren't talking to each other as much. And there's been a significant amount. I mean, I've seen, anywhere between, 100,000 to close to $1 million in one vendor payments that are going out wrong because of the fraud that's being created. And I think that's going to be a big issue for us over the next year, and we all need to be really careful with that. So the two big things for me is that, workspace is definitely changing. The buying habits are definitely changing. And I think the roles that we all play are changing as well. And we all need to adapt to those changing roles as we go into 2021.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Mike. I think, actually a show of hands here, who did any holiday shopping over the weekend in person at all?
Well, two things.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did a little small business Saturday in my downtown. Who did e-commerce shopping in the last week for the holidays? So, obviously it's been changing. There's the weekend numbers are up, and it's all basically due to e-commerce. But story after story, reading in the Boston Globe, my local, and the LA Times, my old local, about shopping centers just being really, really light. So it's an interesting time. It's going to be interesting to see how people stick with e-commerce and how they stick with curbside pickup. Curbside pickup's become just such a big thing now, and it's so people have learned how easy it is. You don't have to go into this big store and bump around with everybody. You can just order what you want and go get it. So thanks, Mike. Good stuff. Amy, you are on.
Thank you so much, Tom. Well, I'm really glad that you didn't ask me to do this 4 years ago, because anything I would have told you 4 years ago, I would have been incredibly wrong about. And I also wish that I didn't have to always be, whatever lawyers on the panel always seems to have to be the voice of doom and gloom. And I'd really like a break from that. But I can't take one this year. What I will tell you is what I would have probably told you 4 years ago with the Trump administration coming in is that things are going to loosen up a little bit, and we will see some relief on the enforcement and regulatory front that we had during the Obama and the David Vladeck FTC. That didn't happen. What we saw over the last 4 years is Republicans acting like no Republicans I have ever met. And it has been the most activist FTC in my 20 years of practice. But they really set the bar. And so for Democrats to come in, even if we have a new chair who is a little bit more moderate thinking, Democrats don't want to act in a less consumer protection friendly way than Republicans. So what we saw over the last 4 years is two real focuses. The first is on aggressive pursuit of individual liability, not just companies, but owners, not just owners, but key executives, chief marketing officers. Anyone who touched the conduct that the FTC didn't like being swept into the process personally. In addition, we've seen an increasing focus on money. To the extent that some at the FTC and leadership have articulated they don't want to see any case that doesn't involve significant monetary payment. And so those are two trends that we expect are going to continue and perhaps even escalate going forward. What this means for companies is it's going to be really hard. We always try to stay away from the FTC, but if you're there, you try to settle cases and move on and get on with your business. It's going to be increasingly more difficult to settle cases, and the need to actually go to the mat and litigate these cases to be able to get out of them in an appropriate way is something we're gonna be seeing. As far as the FTC's priorities going forward, there has been a massive army of folks who have been focused over the last year on COVID fraud. I mean, I call that really good government. They really have protected everyone from from all manner of COVID scams. But that's a whole lot of lawyers that are going to free up pretty soon when we all have the vaccine coursing through our blood. They are going to return to a focus on their bread and butter of claim substantiation, health claims. We're going to continue to see a focus on auto renew and subscriptions, all the things that we're seeing even more of with the turn to e-commerce. We will see in droves. A final thing is, with the move online reviews have never been more important. And there is an increasing regulatory focus on how companies are sourcing reviews, asking for them, how they're moderating reviews, looking at them to choose which to post on their websites and which not. And how they're using reviews in advertising. So a minute ago I said, it's time to get your data mapping and your data house in order. Taking a close look at how you're using consumer reviews is really going to be one of the next frontiers.
That's great stuff, Amy. That actually leads me to loop Patrick in, because Patrick's done such great work, particularly over the years, and also, of course, recently in the cosmetics realm. Your concerns about a bunch of regulatory attorneys suddenly freeing up, as Amy put it, and coming back out, and also too the concept of reviews and social media, and how that's affecting how you're doing things from a production perspective in that space.
Yeah, I mean, it's becoming more and more. I've noticed during the pandemic, the use of experts and doctors and so forth has become a little bit more, a lot more red tape to go through in terms of how we utilize experts. So we just have to think through it a little bit more creatively. That's always. It seems like for 20, as Amy put it, 20 years that I've been doing this, it's always something we need to be looking at and trying to figure out how we're going to best engage the consumer, go with the times. But it's nothing we can't overcome. It's all about having good product, and hopefully with great people like Amy in the mix to help us forge, and deal with the people in Washington, and help us be able to, give good information to consumers, speak the truth, not fudge the truth when it comes to making claims and so forth. But at the same time, I think, we have a job to do in terms of marketing. So, yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Patrick. Anyone else with thoughts on Amy's take? All right, great.
I just want to say something. No, going back to what Amy said, I think reviews are going to be extremely important moving forward. I know when I was buying stuff online this past weekend, you find various prices out there. And one of the things I went to is I reviewed the company to find out what their return policies were, things like that. And I think that is going to be key moving forward as we keep doing more of this buying online and things like that. And one of the things that I always look out for is I want to see some negative reviews. If I see all positive ones, then I'm really concerned that it's just them making up their own reviews. And I think that's kind of what Amy was alluding to at one point. And, and that's key, that we know that information is valid. And, nothing has to be perfect. But I when I look at it, I'm looking for the positives and the negatives. To be honest with you, I don't want to just see positive reviews, because that worries me just as much as the negative ones do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Just to add a little bit on that, which is interesting about the e-commerce world, is a lot of people that got into e-commerce recently, they're trying to find easier business models just to try to invest in e-commerce, and a lot of people went into drop shipping, where you can literally source from Alibaba online, or you can set up a store on Shopify and then import all the products. And not only can you import all the products from Alibaba or AliExpress, but you can import the reviews of those products into your store. So you don't actually have to sell to the customer directly, to already have reviews set up, and you can completely format the way you want those reviews to be seen, negative or positive, what countries you want reviews from or not. So, a good thing to know for the consumer is to know where you're buying primarily. If it's not Amazon, to do it on an e-commerce store that that really can earn your trust, and not just any store that's online. So that's a good point to know. I think there's a ton of reviews out there that are obviously untrue testimonials, but that's something that we also have to fight as marketers, and nothing beats great reviews for a great product. It just really doesn't. Yeah.
Absolutely. Andrea, you're up. Your fearless prediction for 2021.
So my fearless prediction is a little bit differently than everyone else's, because I'm coming at our category of performance-driven marketing from an earned media method, from public relations. So of course, our world has changed. People are not going back to an office. People are consuming more content than ever before, an estimated 11 plus hours a day of content. And therefore, getting involved in this content on an editorial way will be giving us those reviews and those testimonials, but in an editorial way of getting those testimonials. Traditional coverage on television, in newspapers and magazines has gone down tremendously because of the fact of breaking news taking place most of the coverage. So you're turning on your average morning show or your midday show, and you're seeing politics, and you're seeing issues with the weather, you're seeing BLM, you're seeing other hard breaking news issues. So lighter issues or news issues relating to things in our performance driven field are getting less of that journalistic coverage. So in order to get that editorial coverage, we're looking now at other sources, online sources, blogs, online newscasts, podcasts, which are growing tremendously. 50% of American homes have people who are listening to podcasts. And of those homes, the average person who enjoys podcasts listens to 7 a week. So we're now seeing the growth of podcasts, and it'll be interesting to see where our industry then starts advertising on podcasts or becoming affiliated or sponsoring podcasts, because those numbers are truly growing up, and something that we should all be thinking about in our marketing mix, because as time goes on, those numbers are going to increase. Podcasts are here to stay. Many of those podcasters are doing them as video casts. So it's not just audio that you could take with you, but you can be watching it on your mobile device, on your computer, on your tablet, what have you, on your phone. So there's that difference that we have to look at, and that's going to grow tremendously in 2021. What we're going to see go down are going to be print publications. So we're not going to see as many newspapers. My daily newspaper here in North Jersey, each section has about 6 pages. It's just, there's not much news, and I'm not getting current news. I've already learned that yesterday by the time I get the newspaper in the morning. So we're going to see less newspapers, but more video content, more online content. And I think what we have to understand as we look at this growing opportunity for getting press coverage is these journalists are not all trained journalists. They are homegrown journalists who've decided they want to start a blog, and that blog took off. Or they want to write articles and post on different sites that you could post for free, and their articles took off. So we're not going to see the greatest writing and the perfect grammar and sentence structure in what we're doing, but we are going to see more opportunities to be covered. So whether we're looking at marketers with products, those are always covered. There are always people that want to review them in editorial content, and those reviews can translate into being legitimate reviews. They might say, I'm giving a review based on the fact that I received this product, but still they're in a legitimate blog that's been around for a while, or a legitimate news site. So there's that opportunity. And from the business side of our industry, there are more and more editorial opportunities and podcasting opportunities for our experts to get out there and tell the story of our industry, what's happening in our industry and how that's growing. And I think that customers, consumers, potential clients are learning more about performance-driven marketing, about our category, through earned media opportunities. And my only caveat in my prediction is, unfortunately, we're also seeing a lot of pay-to-play in editorial content. So the average person that's watching a TV show and seeing that lifestyle expert go down the table and review 6 or 7 different toy products, doesn't realize that each one of those brands have paid for their item to be on the table. So I think that that's going to grow in 2021. And I think that online reading, online content, and I think that our buyers are going to consume more and more content that is earned editorial media in 2021. And that's my hope as we read through politics and breaking news.
Yeah, I think what you touch on there, Andrea, is just this constant blurring of the lines between paid and unpaid media, between news and blogs. I mean, the American public already has a hard enough time delineating between news coverage and the op-ed page. When it comes to that, then you talk about how companies have paid to be one of those products on the table in a review show, so forth and so on. That's cause for concern. But really, I think what you're saying is and what I'm getting out of it is there's more opportunities than ever to get out there and put your product into what would really be seen as like kind of a micro environment. But the people that you're talking about, the bloggers and social media folks, they have these massive followings of people who just love everything they do, right? And that's
exactly.
a new opportunity.
And I think that, influencers are one thing, and influencers charge a fortune for that one opportunity. But I think that so much of what we do is service driven, that there are so many opportunities to secure press coverage for service driven. One example was I had a client of mine on an insurance podcast, and they were not related to insurance, but they had different services that would help the insurance market. Well, as a result of that podcast, they had a bunch of leads, and they've already filled me in that they've turned 3 of those leads into clients. So we're looking at zigging and zagging. It's not a straight line to secure press coverage, but I think for all of us, whether we're looking at analytics or we're looking at production or we're looking at call centers or whatever our areas of expertise are, there are those opportunities to get that third-party editorial endorsement, that earned media in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely. Amy, you look like you got something. Lori's got something. Amy, I think you might have
Amy
something
can
as
go.
well.
Oh, no, Laura, you go first.
All I was going to say is, Andrea, I'm glad you touched on all of what you brought to light. And just to add to that, I think what's really becoming interesting in full circle, not in paid versus non-paid, is the idea of podcasters, like a Rachel Maddow with Bagman. And now she's written a book called Bagman. And the book promotes the podcast and Rachel promotes the book and the podcast. So we're also seeing a full circle of structure when it comes to reaching the consumer, but it's gonna blend. And I believe Andrea's right. The way in which we have to delve into what's real and not, what's paid and not, is going to be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's exactly where I was. Oops, go ahead,
Amy.
I was going to say exactly the same thing, just from the legal lens, that it is really, none of this is binary, and it's this continuum. So even on the one hand, we have advertising or pay to play, and on the other hand, something that's purely editorial. So much of this content that we're seeing created, including by brands and marketers themselves, is somewhere in the middle. And just figuring out what are the disclosure obligations, if any. I mean, obviously, if you've paid to have your product on that, on that shelf or on that table, that's a given. And if you're not, if there's no disclosure there, that's a pretty easy one. And the FTC brings those cases all the time. But where there's more of kind of a symbiotic or an ongoing relationship, and it's not clear who's paying for what. Those are ones where where we're definitely going to see emerging emerging case law in that what is native advertising, what is not native advertising. And it also brings up one of our age-old lawyer favorite things to talk about: disclosures. In print, We get it. It's, we always want to put things kind of on the bottom in smaller type, but it usually is, the disclosure is there and it's somewhere near the claim or the content that we're talking about. But how to get that disclosure in a podcast or even in a video cast? Is it audio? Is it at the beginning of the show? Is it at the time when a product is talked about? Can you wait till the end? Like all of these things, we just don't have a real clear landscape, and they're all sort of emerging as we go along.
Yeah, and I think to Amy's point, when it comes to true earned media, that you did not exchange a product or a financial obligation for that editorial coverage, obviously you don't have to have that disclosure because it's an interview. And therefore you're not handing over everything, but we are now seeing those lines get blurred more in the public relations field. But I think that gives us more opportunities to secure that coverage and to secure another element of performance-driven marketing, of direct response marketing, of what are you going to put in your media buy plans for 2021, for each quarter, and looking at that and looking at the growth of those. Because as Lori was saying, you look at a podcast that becomes hugely successful, like Rachel Maddow, like Gary Z. But then you look at other smaller podcasts, may not have thousands and thousands of listeners, but they do have a dedicated listener base. So even if that dedicated listener base is 50,000 or 5,000, if out of those 5,000, you're going to have a large group wanting to purchase your product, then it's worth having a little piece of the pie go to the advertising on that podcast. So it's going to be an interesting 2021 in the world of earned media.
That's funny because everything's cyclical, right? Radio begot TV, and TV begot digital, so forth and so on. Now, podcast, with the power of the podcast and these dedicated listeners, you're going back to the importance of what? The live read by the radio host of the ad, and because they buy into that host. So anyway, cyclical as always. Patrick, let's go to you for your prediction on 2021.
Well, everybody pretty much brilliantly has already said a lot of what I was going to say. Amy, as Amy mentioned, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, definitely would be nothing like what the current state of things are in our world in terms of how we as a business and how we proceed. I think this coming year, I think what we're as we start to emerge from the pandemic again, fingers crossed, that I think there's gonna be a lot of learning, a lot of good lessons. Before the pandemic, at least in my part of the business, we would do things a lot of the same ways. You have a structure of how you approach creative. People give their comments, you go in, you do it, you execute, and that's it. This year, all of that has definitely gone out the window. And I think we've actually learned a great deal. And I think all of those great lessons we learned this year is what we're going to see moving forward. You have to learn how to, do brilliant creative in lots of different ways when you're, when everybody has to be in masks, and how do you show that and keep everybody safe? And I think, as far as like in e-commerce in general, and the different funnels and how we actually seed content, it's been like a PhD lesson throughout this last year of how I go about that. I used to think in TV, we would do a campaign, and I've done some amazing work with Lori, who has been a great partner in campaigns in the past. Where we're creating a TV ad, but we're creating lots of good digital content along the way. And now, I think when I'm going into something, I'm thinking of a whole ecosystem of how I can, actually seed it in very unique ways. I've assumed a role in charge of creative strategy for the Luminous brands, and we have a whole kind of treasure of products, and it's how do we treat each of those products differently And as a couple of people already mentioned here, one feeds the other, and that's how I have to actually approach doing content now. One thing will feed another thing, feeds another, etc. So I think as far as a prediction, I think in all of our facets of the business, we learn a lot from what's happened this last year, and we put it into action. As Shai pointed out, I think AI is going to be huge. It's already a big part of what we're doing in content in terms of recognizing even things that we shoot. We have technology that actually recognizes it and tags it for all different facets of how we would use that content. It's just going to speed things up faster and faster and faster. I think, we thought going into the pandemic, we thought, well, let's take a beat, let's take a breather. And as I think all of us have learned in our business this year, it's 10 times faster than it ever was a year ago, and it'll probably just keep getting faster in the year ahead.
Great, thanks, Patrick. And as we get closer to the hour here, I'm just going to move straight to Lori for your prediction, then we'll get to some of the questions from the audience.
Thank you, Tom. And Patrick, that was wonderful what you were saying. Our prediction here is that if 2020 was known as the year of reactive adaptation, then 2021 will be known as a year of proactive innovation. And there are different ways that proactive innovation will create the change. For the members of PDMI, which are dedicated to using media with a measurable KPI in order to maximize performance-driven and D2C campaigns, in 2021, there'll be a tremendous need to address lost revenue. I think that's going to be the key of my prediction. A proactive way to address this is to incorporate B2B initiatives, both internally and as a recommendation to our clients. For example, in the banking industry, I read that attribution levels are at a 5-year low. So in order to increase and meet their revenues, marketers in banking are now being very diverse, and they're incorporating, which I know what we are all going to be happy to hear, direct response efforts. They're also using cross-selling services, which will also be part of the marketing mix. Another prediction as a result of revenue loss will most likely lead to the redefinition or the definition of what an agency of record means, because we believe there'll be a different relationship and there'll be different models. So the AOR won't be as stringent and as confined as it was in the past. Other changes for 2021 and beyond will be one-on-one omni-channel marketing with content creation. I know we talked about it. Another example is email marketing now includes social media, SEO, and programmatic advertising. But from an operational and organizational perspective, workplaces will need to become agile. And as much as we spoke already on this webinar about being home and the work at home model, it's really going to be a dynamic of changing company culture, if not completely overhauling it. So employees, which are traveling less and working remotely and using telephony for meetings, now must be agile in how they work, which includes technology-driven exchanges of information, and it will produce in the long run higher productivity. There's this new terminology called customer-driven platforms. I know it's not so new, but the CDPs will be needed to integrate now across all lines of business. So operationally, this is a huge undertaking and not a simple task. So an agile workplace will weed out employees that can't keep up with the change. It's been noted that 47% of marketers need a week to make a decision. Another 47% need 3 to 5 days. What's really interesting is that 19% can make immediate decisions because their decisions are based on robust marketing tools, analytics, and technology. So to successfully create an agile workplace, we predict in 2021, internal and external stakeholders will need to consider the costs and diversify their budgets. They need to redefine business as usual, pivot with flexibility, especially setting goals for lines of business. And companies will move away from work equals full-time, and they'll incorporate part-time and consultants to find the best talent to get the job done, because now, with Google and everything else, it's very easy to keep a labor cloud for all to cross-connect efforts. In 2021, marketing teams will need to work from the same data sets, and they'll start moving away much more, and it's already started, from siloed customer data. This additional expansion of effort will be a burden, and it will tax performance-driven results based on segmentation and the optimization needs of audience reach. Lastly, we predict proactive innovation will lead to acquisitions forming multi-industry services with a national, multinational reach, creating parent companies with varied service and product offerings, attracting a wider base of customers, which will redefine the marketing, media, and advertising industries. But in conclusion, the predictability of success is slim without leaders who will incorporate a humanistic approach to change. And what we hope to see, it's not so much a prediction, is that resilience replaces the more is more and work harder. Gratitude is abundant because people will begin and continue to send notes, keep journals, and encourage a work environment, as well as defining their client relationships based on appreciation and encouraging creativity in the workplace, such as benchmarking browsers while doing all this work at home to include meditation moments, music, or nature. The leaders that listen and stress collaboration will have businesses that recover from the burnout. As Patrick said, it's just faster and faster as they embrace proactive innovation.
That's a tremendous.
I hope you're right.
Here, here.
That's great. I mean, look, I think you know, I really liked the. I mean, the whole set of the answer was tremendous. I love the heart at the end of it. I think we all can learn from that and can learn from the challenges we faced here over the last year, and carry our business forward with a different kind of face, different kind of an outlook, different kind of understanding for each other. So I think that's obviously hugely important. In listening to the rest of your prediction, though, it's almost as if, and I'd love to hear the group react to this. We've talked for years and years and years and years as people who are in business, flexibility, agility, adaptability. We all blah blah blah. You know, we're always talking about. Then 2020 shows up, and we had no choice, and it's now the reality is all of those things. You know, I had appeared on 2 webinars in my life before taking part in creating and hosting 30 of them in the last 6 months. You know, it's you know, and compared to some people, that's easy. So, you know, the reality of that agility and flexibility, the group going forward. What are your thoughts on that? And you know, what's one way that you've tested your own ability to adapt during this time and that you can carry forward? I'll just throw it out there, and whoever wants to take it can go for it.
Well, I'll jump in then, you know, on that. And I think that, you know, I've had a home office for 5.5 years. So for me, that wasn't the challenge, but the challenge was, and you know this, and I'm sure many of our viewers know this who know me, I'm a people person, I'm a hugger. And I love to see someone face to face. And I think that that's been a challenge. But I think with webinars, with Zoom, we've created that human touch because now we've learned a little more about each other. We know who has a dog, or who has a cat, or who has a child running into the room, or when it's pouring outside and someone had bad internet connection and suddenly we're kicked off. So I think that we're all that Lori mentioned, this humanistic way of looking at things and this proactive way of looking at things, but humanly talking to people about how are we going to approach this topic? How are we going to succeed? And I always say failure is not an option. And in 2021, it's definitely not an option because we all want to succeed. So we're putting our personalities in it, our blood, sweat, and our tears in it, and working together and being human, you know, in it. So thank you, Lori, for those terrific comments.
Yes, absolutely.
I think there's, I know everybody calls it working at home. I some days call it living at work. And I think getting that, and in some ways it's very freeing. You know, I can go hit my Peloton at 3 PM if that's when I want to. And, you know, normally that would be when you're working, but there's also that tendency to kind of never stop working. Or if your computer's open because your office is your kitchen, that, you know, that you never leave. And I think it's been a challenge for me to figure out with my team, you know, if I send something out to them at 2 AM, being self-aware enough to realize they might think I need an answer now, and kind of, you know, flexing to both the benefits of of more flexibility, but also kind of the self-realization that we need to set some boundaries and some expectations for ourselves as well as for our teams and for our business partners.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else want to jump in before we get to the audience's questions here?
I'm just glad we can have a drink at 10 a.m. and nobody can know about it. You know, so that real flexibility.
I now drink my water out of a wine glass, so I pretend like I'm drinking all day long, because that didn't work out too well for me.
No, but in all seriousness, no, I think, you know, we're probably 90% of all businesses are never going to go back to full time at the office.
Correct.
I think we're going to look at, you know, I think the most probable model that we're going to see out there is just hybrid. You might go to the office 2 days a week, and then the rest of the week you're working from home. But that is the one aspect of life in this new world that we're looking at that will not change. I don't believe it will. I think primarily because of the pandemic and safety issues, but also because of something that Michael was mentioning earlier, which is that operationally, you know, a lot of people and businessmen have started realizing how expensive it is to have an office and employees at the office all the time, and it's just not as functional. And I think that a lot of people were afraid to take the leap in creating a work at home model, or outsourcing to, you know, companies like Upwork where you can hire, you know, remotely and stuff like that. I think that fear is gone because of what you mentioned, Tom, the fact that we were just pushed into this situation and we just had to deal with it. So we've realized that there's some value to this structure of being flexible and dynamic, from an operational point of view, from a safety point of view. So I don't think we're going to go back. I think the new model is going to be hybrid, and we'll probably stay there. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. Let's go to the audience for some questions. First one that pops through here is very much a TV related and a TV media related. So I'll let whoever wants to take it. How do you think the gap in TV show production due to COVID, basically a content gap that we've all heard about, will impact how and where people advertise on TV in 2021?
Well,
go ahead, Patrick.
I'll take a little bit of it. Well, I mean, there is a bit of a gap in production that happened, but you'd be surprised. I mean, most of Hollywood is even with our California lockdown, everything is shooting right now. So you know, there's lots of protocols in place. We had about a 3-month period where, you know, general production and film and TV stopped. But come July, a lot of the big features were already in production. So, you know, I think that's going to be somewhat minimal in the big scheme of things. You know, and the way that a lot of the studios and you know, streaming services and networks have done a lot of their releasing of either new shows that kind of you know, basically dominoed it out throughout the year, so that there's still fresh content as it relates to general creative. In our world, you know, we haven't, you know, literally I stopped for maybe a month, but we were shooting user generated the whole month of April. So, you know, we never stopped, like it just kept going. So, you know, I see little impact on that side.
Great. Anyone else? Good stuff, Patrick. Kind of a general group question, and actually this is a question that we asked in our last workshop council meeting in our own way, but yeah, it has to do as we look ahead to 2021 and hopefully, fingers crossed, getting back to in-person contacts and in-person events. Show of hands here, who is ready, willing, and able to travel and also has approval to travel for business? Almost half. That's in the right direction. Hopefully, if we did this again in 6 months, everyone would raise their hands, right? If not sooner. You know, I think that's a really crucial thing. Also, I wanted to get to this question that just came in about that face-to-face environment. And again, this is out to anyone who wants to take it. As we've gone through this and we talked about, you know, the idea of all the Zooming and Andrea spoke so eloquently about all of that, but wanting to get back to face-to-face. Are there lessons here that we've learned in this environment that we can actually take back out into the face-to-face, person-to-person environment that will benefit us?
100%. I think that the number of video calls and presentations that we've been doing has certainly fine-tuned our message, had us learn more. I'm a big believer. I like to learn something new every single day. And I've learned a lot of new things from this panel today. So I think that taking that education, taking that fine-tuning and bringing it to that face-to-face is going to benefit all of us. And I look at so many people I've met who've taught me such interesting things, and hopefully people who I've been able to teach them something. So I think before we didn't have as much time to learn something because we were rush. We have to get to this meeting and get to this conference and get on the plane. And I think now we're taking that time to learn. In fact, tonight I'm going to a webinar on a topic that was just very interesting to me. Has nothing to do with business, but I'm learning something.
That's great. Great. One last question, if you guys can, it's for everybody, so we're going to go around the horn. I'm just going to go around the horn how I see you on my screen. So try to keep it as tight as possible since we're tight on time. Based on you and your fellow council members' fearless predictions, is there one thing that you're bullish about for your business in 2021? And Amy, I'm going to go to you first because you're in the upper left corner of my screen.
Oh, mute.
I was going to say, y'all are going to need me. So it's just, if my, I don't really have a plan other than we'll just, we'll just, I hope that we will ride all of this out together, and we will make good choices and all be okay. But
Thank you. Thanks. That's awesome. Shai, you're next.
A bullish prediction would just be watch out for a lot of artificial intelligence. We're really looking into that, so I think that's going to be really interesting. I'm very excited. So AI is the way to go. Yeah.
Great. Lori, what about you?
I think that we've been working in virtually, and the thing that we're excited about and feel that things will move forward is that people can adapt and will adapt. And we've presented our clients with different thoughts. I expressed some of them in from an operational and organizational point of view, but we're excited, nothing specific, just we're excited about how people and clients are embracing what can be and what will be digital vignettes, Patrick, PR, podcasts, merchant processing, and Joseph, everything you're doing is helping everyone make decisions very well.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Mike, how about you?
I think from my standpoint, from the finance side of things, I'm excited that more people are moving away from paper and automating their processes. And it's making things easier for both sides, not only getting information out, but also getting payments out faster so they can move on to the next piece of it. And, the only piece that I highly recommend is watch out for the fraud. We're seeing a lot of that on a daily basis. These guys are getting smarter every day. But, as long as you're going through the right steps, automating your accounts payable certainly is a big thing that's moving forward in the process.
Great. Thanks. Joseph, your turn.
Well, for our business, we were really humbled early on in the whole COVID-19 situation. Initially, like so many of us, kind of uncertain, a little nervous about the climate. How was our business going to survive? Kind of churn, might we experience? And, experienced a little bit at the beginning, and things sort of stabilized. For us, it was a proving ground. We're a TV research platform, and I think TV research becomes very valuable when the climate just changes overnight, and everyone's trying to figure out, well, what's working? Where is it working? What creative approaches are working? So having access to that information, we work with networks, we work with advertisers, we work with agencies. It was really nice to hear from a lot of our different clients, the difference that the technology was making, and them being able to really understand and read the landscape, including some of the networks that said, wow, our advertiser mix changed overnight. And we were able to really see who was out there in performance advertising that was spending, because we had to backfill with these, more performance-based advertisers in a climate where a lot of the brand advertisers were pulling back. And I think we're going to see a shift back to normality, but nevertheless a shift. And so, for us, it's rewarding to be able to provide that kind of insight to the industry. It's sort of been an exciting time, nerve-wracking time, all kind of mixed in together. It's been an interesting year, but yeah, we're excited to continue to, serve the industry going forward into 2021 and continue to expand. I think we're monitoring around 130 plus networks. We're looking to expand that further and possibly, climate willing, get into local broadcast next year as well, which would be great.
Great. Awesome, Joseph. Thank you. Patrick, your bullish moment.
So, I think the need for constant, fresh content, especially video, has never been more ripe for the taking. What this year has taught is, I can be in a studio shooting safely and under COVID protocol here in LA, while I have a computer up on Zoom in another studio in New York and be shooting two things with capable teams, and being able to, just keep the flow moving. So, my hope for this year is to be able to figure out, how to even take that to the next level and, bring in more great people to work with that can help fulfill the need for constant, fresh content.
Great. Thank you, Patrick. And Andrew, you get the last word here.
The last word is don't pigeonhole yourself or your business. Pivot was the word for 2020. I'd like to say that 2021 will continue to be zig and zag and be open-minded, because with new opportunities come new sources of revenue, come new relationships. And with all of that, we can all continue to grow our businesses and our membership in the PDMI.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you to all of you. A wonderful group, and made my job very, very easy here. A lot of great thoughts. So we appreciate your time, your vision. A big thank you to the audience for turning out to listen and watch. Our next seasonal seminar series event will take place in January and will be announced soon. Keep an eye on your email and the PDMI's website and social media for more info. Your next opportunity to attend a PDMI live event online is our next episode of Take 20, which is our 20-minute webinar series created by our Brand Response Council. This next one airs live tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, so my smiling face will be back on your screen in less than 24 hours. Please visit thepdmi.com/take-20 to check out the upcoming schedule and register to attend today. Thanks again for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day, the rest of your work week. Happy holidays to everybody. Stay safe and stay well. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.